good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining the first session. Before I move on, I want to say that I'm very happy to be here because I attended the conference 2 years ago just as an attendee, and I learned so much, not only from the presentations, but also from the exchanges with people that my work after that really benefit from it. And so now it's a way to give something back or something like that. So I will start by making a brief introduction to the project, which is a documentation project that started in 2022, and that was part of my master thesis, and it's now part of my PhD thesis. It's a documentation project that has both academic and community outputs, a grammar and a small dictionary. It's mainly funded by the Firebear Foundation and the Jacob Research Funds. And last important or relevant thing here is that I had another life before joining academia as a second language teacher, and most of the methodologies I used for the training were taken from this background. So to introduce the language I work with, it's called Yamalero, and it's spoken in this corner of Colombia, really close to Venezuela, by around 300 speakers, and it is a member of the small Wahiban language family. The community I work with is a community that was semi-nomadic until the 80s, and then it settled in a reserve and started an acculturation process. Right now, they have a primary school with 2 local teachers, which are hardly the only people who earn a salary. Most people don't have regular paid jobs, and hunting and fishing practices are still the main food suppliers. So the goals of this talk are basically 2. The first one is to discuss the goals and limitations of collaborative language work with communities with low degree of contact, and a bit more generally, with communities in general. And the second one is share the training methodologies used with my community for researchers who might face similar situations. And I'll do that by, well, we already went over the introduction, but I will briefly discuss a bit why I think it's important to take into account the degree of contact when starting collaborative language work. And then the main part of the talk will be talking about the training itself, mainly the contents, the methodology, and the outcomes. And I will finish with some final ideas. So, if we talk about collaboration, one of the most well-known definitions is the one which says that research collaboration is language work that is that is conducted for, with, and by the language-speaking community. And I think these 3 prepositions are very significant and can inform a bit more about this kind of relationships. And that's why projects that are for a language community wouldn't be really collaborative, I think, because they understand community members as passive agents. Projects that work with native speakers already give them some sort of agentivity. This usually includes training, but usually there are still an-egalitarian relationships because the researcher is the one taking most of the decisions, and some of his tasks cannot be done by the native speakers, while collaboration by or work done by native speakers should allow native speakers to have an egalitarian relationship with the researcher, and at some point they could lead the project and the researcher could step a bit away. For this, there are different skills that ideally speakers should have. Projects that work with speakers require basic computing skills, be able to write in local orthography, and managing recording equipment. And this can more likely be taught to lower contact communities, and also, of course, both higher. But then if we move to projects that aim at being done by speakers, another set of skills is needed: more advanced computing, grant writing skills, project management, and this probably is more likely to be taught in communities with a higher degree of contact. I think we can we can probably assess contact by many different ways, but I find it useful here to correlate it with level of education, and actually we find collaboration projects from all sorts or almost all sorts of backgrounds. Those that work with speakers with higher education, those that work with speakers who have secondary education, digital literacy, and only basic literacy. And I haven't found in the literature any project that has started working with a community where most speakers were illiterate. Robinson is an example of why she could not do that. But if anyone knows of one, please let me know. So this will lead to the maybe only hypothesis so far that collaboration is probably easier with communities with higher levels of education, while it is more difficult as the level of education goes down. And this is something that I will try to test maybe with the experience and with the ongoing experience with my community. And now I will say something at the end, just on the moment we are right now. So let's move to this third section, discuss more specifically the training after this introduction. The profile of my training participants is people who are, most of them, literate in Spanish and who are learning the Yamalero orthography, who have no computer literacy, although they are starting using smartphones, who are studying on and off at a secondary school, mostly young participants, and both men and women. Before I started the trainings, I had some doubts or fears. Like the first one was, will I succeed in teaching them the necessary skills to conduct this work? And more importantly, are they going to keep working once I leave the field, like without my presence there, which was the thing that was really pushing them at the beginning? And then other fears from other field workers who, in discussions, have told me, well, but I can't do this because if I bring cameras or laptops, they would just sell them, and I don't feel okay with this, of course. So before starting, if you will ask for my expectations, I will tell you that I was not sure at all that the project would go forward, but I still had some hope, so that's why I tried, and maybe it was something like 50-50. So the training were divided into two training periods, in March and in June 2023. Both of them lasted for 2 weeks, similar amount of participants in each of them. Some of the participants participated in both, actually. Most of the participants participated in both. And the goal of the first one was only teaching participants to transcribe in ELAN using the transcription mode, so not creating new ELAN files, not segmentic. This work was going to be done by me, but then only being able to listen, transcribe, and translate to Spanish. While the second training, the goal was to teach them so that they could become full documenters, so that they could record, create ELAN files, and so on. In this first training, we focus on three parts: acquiring digital literacy, learning the Yamalero orthography, or consolidating the orthography, and transcribing, as I said, using the ELAN transcription mode. It was mainly a first week of classes all together and a second week of practicum, 1 hour per day, in which I would sit with the 5 of them and just see how they transcribe and translate, and for 5 hours per day, one for each. The outcome of this training was that only 2 people arrived at the end of these 2 weeks, and only one finally managed to continue transcribing and translating text. I say only one, but that was a great success actually, because I was expecting maybe that no one would continue. So when I first received an email with a WeTransfer file with EF files, I was really moved, and that was one of the most special moments I've experienced so far in this project. So I decided, okay, we can move on and try to have a second training where speakers will learn video recording techniques, metadata, processing files, and how to create and segment ELAN files. The methodology was the same, 2 weeks. The first one, practical classes. The second one, practicum, in this case not individually, but in groups of 3. I would also be with them separately. And out of the 6 participants, all of them finished. And then when I left the field, one of these 2 groups kept working, so 3 people kept working, and during this period, this last year, from July 2023 to July 2024, they managed to record 9 hours of text and fully transcribe and translate them. And this data is in process of being archived to ELAR right now. Methodology. During this first week, we had explanations that lasted at most 15 or 20 minutes. Always, it was more like demonstration than PowerPoint classes, and always with practicing what I just showed. Explanation practice with an afternoon assignment to practice what we did in the morning. The day after, we would start with feedback from this assignment in the afternoon, and something I think is also very important, this personal attention that we had in the second weeks, which was either working with small groups or individually. Okay, a couple of tricks I went to that were really helpful for me in order to avoid them being lost once I left the field. Video tutorials work really well to show them how to go on the process. And then something I started doing later was installing a remote control software. TeamViewer is the one I use, and it's been really helpful when Profe, that's the way they call me, we don't know what happened, help us, we are stuck, so I can connect from home, and that's really a plus. So I think I'm running out of time, so I will end with some final ideas. For the instructor, I think probably obvious, most of them, but the empathy is really important. So try to imagine what their position is, like when you plan the trainings, and reproduce step by step what you think they will do. And only if you try to put on their shoes, you might have some chances to succeed. Patience, also very important. I've been sitting with them, just waiting for them to find a keyboard key, maybe for 30 seconds or a minute, and getting stressed and so on. But in all cases, it was best just try them to do it, even if it's so slow, but it's the way to learn. Well, some other, that I will skip. This is something that has also already been done or said in the literature, positive consequences of having speakers' involvement. In my case, the amount of recorded, transcribed, and translated text is way higher than what I could achieve by myself. Also, the representation of women in corpus is higher than what I could achieve by myself because of the fact that I am a man. And the recording topics were chosen by native speakers once they understood the concept of what would be interesting to record. And since then, I think, since they know their culture much better than I know, that is also an advantage. Some not so positive consequences, mainly that their main motivation for work is still economic compensation, and this might difficult to continue the work once the project money is over. And this is already my last speaker, my last slide, sorry. Well, to link it a bit with the beginning, I think that in this case, I've shown that working with speakers from communities with low degree of contact is possible and also desirable. However, this research might not be led by these trained speakers, or at least in these time frames. Maybe if we had projects that we can plan in 10 years' time, maybe, but so far it even doesn't work like that. And then the hands-on methodology with personal attention is vital, and the training these speakers has had for me an invaluable personal reward. And thanks for listening. I'm happy to listen to your questions and feedback.
Thank you, David. We have 3 minutes for questions.
Hi, David. Thank you for the presentation. This question is motivated by the slide in which you called the orthography a developing orthography. Mm-hmm. And comes in a way from a point of concern about what we are doing when we ask speakers just to sort of do the transcription and translation work. And I am concerned sometimes that we are sort of asking speakers just to do the sort of manual labor of these projects. And we sort of keep the linguistic theory from them. So in this context, I'm wondering if there are issues related, say, to phonological representations or word boundaries, for example, in this language, that are issues that will continue to evolve in the transcription process, but are issues that perhaps you're discussing with speakers as they go through this process. I've also, in my own experience, and seen many colleagues sort of make these decisions on their own as these projects evolve. And I'm just wondering if you could talk about those kinds of issues a bit more in your project, because my personal feeling is that if these projects are going to be really by the community, then they also sort of come to be trained in these more theoretical issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so thanks for the question. I didn't elaborate on what I meant by developing orthography, but now it's good that I have the chance to talk a bit more about it. It's in orthography not mainly developed by me, but an orthography that the community started to develop right before I arrived. That was a mere coincidence, but when I arrived in 2022, they had just printed alphabetization materials elaborated by mainly the two community teachers, which was a proposal of how to write represent sounds into graphies. And we've been following this so far, although unfortunately I'm my documentation team doesn't include any of these two teachers, but more young people, but they have different roles. But the trainees are like in this hierarchical relationship with the local teachers, so whatever they say, they are okay with it. And I hope that in the future I can work more with the community teachers, like especially with one of them that is the one that is leading like more the process. Especially with issues like word boundary, which unlike the orthography, is not that well established, and my collaborators sometimes separate what for me are morphemes and which I would write together in the same word. So yeah, definitely developing this analysis together is one of the main second stage goals. I think more with this local teacher than with the young trainees, because they are also not really interested so far, and I haven't been able to also raise this interest in them. But okay.
Hi, sorry, I wrote a question in the chat.